Let's start with Module 2, EITC Training Program, Abilities Beyond Disabilities.
In the previous module, we reviewed the concept, definition, need, and evolution of inclusive education with respect to children with special needs, CWSN. In this module, we will learn about disability types from policy lens, meaningful inclusion, and effective labeling. Shifting from medical to social model.
Let us find out who are person with disability from policy lens. According to Right to Person with Disability Act 2016, a person with disability means a person with long-term physical, mental, intellectual, or sensory impairment, which in interaction with barriers, hinders his full and effective participation in society, equally with others. However, most of the government provisions under RPWD Act are not applicable to every person with disabilities, rather are applicable to a person with benchmark disability. Now then, who are a person with benchmark disability? A person with benchmark disability is a person with not less than 40% of a specified disability, where specified disability has been defined in measurable terms, as certified by the certifying authority.
So, why is it important to learn about benchmark disabilities? Since maximum government benefits, scholarships and other aids are extended to the person with benchmark disabilities, who acquire the certificate from certifying authority on specified disability. Let's find out, what are those specified disabilities covered under the RPWD Act, 2016?
Now let's discuss, what are these specified disabilities? There are 21 disabilities mentioned under RPWD Act 2016, which are majorly grouped under these 5 heads. 1. Physical disability. 2. Intellectual disability. 3. Mental behavior. 4. Disability caused specific condition. 5. Multiple disabilities.
Now, let's take a look at the first head of specified disability, which is physical disability. Under physical disability, we see 4 more subheads. The first subhead, under physical disability head, is locomotor disabilities. This condition is defined as a person's inability to execute distinctive activities associated with movement of self and objects resulting from affliction of musculoskeletal or nervous system or both. Under locomotor disabilities, 5 more disabilities are included. Leprosy cured, cerebral palsy, dwarfism, muscular dystrophy, acid attack victims. The second subhead under physical disability head is visual impairment. Under the second subhead, 2 disabilities are mentioned as blindness, low vision. The third subhead under physical disability head is hearing impairment. 2 disabilities are mentioned under the subhead as deaf, hard of hearing. The fourth subhead under physical disability head is speech and language disability, which is defined in the Act as a permanent disability arising out of conditions, such as laryngectomy, or aphasia, affecting one or more components of speech and language. The second head of specified disability is intellectual disability, which is defined as a condition characterized by significant limitation both in intellectual functioning, reasoning, learning, problem-solving, and in adaptive behavior, which covers a range of everyday, social and practical skills. Under intellectual disability, we see 2 conditions are included. The first subhead, under intellectual disability head, is specific learning disabilities. Under specific learning disabilities, 5 conditions are mentioned: dyslexia, dysgraphia, dyscalculia, dyspraxia, developmental aphasia. The second subhead under intellectual disability head is autism spectrum disorder, which itself is a neurodevelopmental condition, typically appearing in the first 3 years of life that significantly affects a person's ability to communicate, understand relationships and relate to others. The third head of specified disabilities is mental behavior. This head mentions about mental illness. Mental illness means a substantial disorder of thinking, mood, perception, orientation or memory that grossly impairs judgment, behavior, capacity to recognize reality, or ability to meet the ordinary demands of life, but does not include retardation, which is a condition of arrested, or incomplete development of mind of a person, specially characterized by subnormality of intelligence. The fourth head of specified disability is disability-caused specific condition. Under this group, two conditions are mentioned. Disability caused due to chronic neurological conditions. Under chronic neurological conditions, we have two disabilities: multiple sclerosis, Parkinson's. The second subhead is disability caused due to blood disorder. Under this group, three conditions are mentioned: hemophilia, thalassemia, sickle cell disease. Fifth, and the last head, under specified disabilities is multiple disabilities. Multiple disabilities refers to more than one of the above specified disabilities, such as deafblindness. Thus, there are 21 types of specified disabilities: blindness, low vision, leprosy-cured persons, hearing impairment, locomotor's disability, dwarfism, intellectual disability, mental illness, autism spectrum disorder, cerebral palsy, muscular dystrophy, chronic neurological conditions, specific learning disabilities, multiple sclerosis, speech and language disability, thalassemia, hemophilia, sickle cell disease, multiple disabilities including deafblindness, acid attack victim, Parkinson's disease.
Many of the above-mentioned condition require some specific kind of facilities, a part of infrastructure requirements, such as speech therapy, occupational therapy, etc. So, you may have a question, that how can a school extend so many facilities? Does inclusion rejects the need and importance of special school?
The answer lies in this inverse pyramid. Meaningful inclusion does not reject the importance of special school. Although, it depends on the severity of disability of the child, that which institution can extend the best of the facilities for overall development of child with special needs. Also, considering the facts pertaining to financial constraint of institution, lesser availability of specialized faculty, space, resources, etc., it is not always possible for schools to extend essential facilities like physiotherapist, occupational therapist, etc. Therefore, schools must look forward to resource sharing and mobile special teachers for facilitating learning and development of children with special needs under inclusive environment. As also proposed under New Education Policy, NEP 2020. However, non-availability of special schools must not mean that the child with special needs is denied the right to education. Therefore, regular schools must be prepared for inclusive education by adopting inclusive education practices. Starting with identification of special education needs. Meaningful inclusion is an approach to education which is self-sustaining and does not depend completely on availability or non-availability of resources. Rather, it depends on the opportunity to access the right to education that is extended by the institution. Let's discuss about the meaningful inclusion and effective labeling. Meaningful inclusion does not start with resource availability. Rather, it starts with acceptance and identification of children with special needs. An inclusive environment cannot be designed without clear understanding of the special needs of the child. However, while in this process of identification of special needs, teachers due to ignorance, unconsciously, starts to label the children with special needs in numerous ways. Let's understand by looking into the following case study.
Hi, my name is Saurabh. I work in a private company and I have mild autism. I would like to share my experience with labeling while growing up, which I must say was not a good one, rather it's a traumatic experience. When I was identified with special need, because of slow pace of learning in comparison to peers, I realized for the first time that something is wrong with me. since I often saw my parents and teachers talk about me. Parents and teachers started to discuss over my deficiencies in learning and other activities more and more, and so I started to feel bad about myself. They proceed with the clinical assessment for identifying the capacities and learning need. It impacted me even more. While looking into the results, it was found that, from socializing to learning, I was marked as unfit in all the areas. I remember, when I was about 10 years old, I was praying to God and asking Him, why I'm like this? Why am I not like others?
For a 10-year-old, approval and appreciation is very much important. Absence of which might have impact on his behavior and personality. Therefore, while embracing inclusion, schools and teachers must avoid labeling the student as slow or unfit. In the above case, even though parents and teachers of Saurabh were trying to help him, but the process of identification of special needs shifted its focus on identifying the disabilities, which had an impact on the self-esteem of a child. We must understand that any form of disability is just a condition, and not an identity of the child.
Also, if we talk about labeling, Becker's theory on labeling suggests actions done by a person doesn't make the act deviant, but how people react to the same labels it as deviant. In other words, children with special need doesn't choose to behave in a certain way. How teachers react to the same decides upon the label that will be associated with the child. For example, if a child with specific learning disability is reading slow pace, it is not because he or she is slow, it is because of the neurological condition for which he or she faces difficulty in reading. Let's see, what are the impacts of labeling? Labeling affects both one who is being labeled and one who is labeling. In the context of children with special needs, they are subjected to differential treatment that affects individuals' self-image and self-esteem. On the other hand, it puts the labeler in the state where he is subject to biases, preferences, prejudices, stereotypes and overgeneralization. In other words, when a teacher identifies the disability of a child, they are likely to establish the disability as the only identity of the child. Such as, blind boy, slow girl, stupid child, etc. Many times it happens due to unconscious biases, which lie within us. On one hand we accept the child, and on the other hand, the way we treat the child with our unconscious biases may affect his or her self-esteem and emotional well-being.
Now, the question arises, how to avoid labeling, and what shall be done for meaningful inclusion? Meaningful inclusion starts with understanding the differences between medical model and the social model of disability. Medical model of disability, also known as personal tragedy model. In this, the disability of the person is seen as a central problem, and a personal problem of that person, that requires special arrangements to be done for him, be it for education or other social structure. It pushes upon the need for separate arrangement required for the person with special needs. This model contributes in creating attitudinal barrier among the people of the society. Now, let's discuss the social model of disability. The perspective of the social model stands stronger with inclusive environment that is meant for all, and is not an individual specific, and it argues with the medical model for leading ways for protective discrimination. The social model of disability does not deny the conditions associated with disability. It points out that the failure of individual is not always due to the disability of the person, and rather, it is the disability of the environment which is responsible for posing limitation upon the person with disability. Let's understand this with an example. Meena goes to the school at her vicinity. She is often absent. What is the problem? This question will be answered by the medical model of disability as, the problem is the disability of the child. And therefore, the solution extended by the school is allowing her to remain absent and provide her with books. However, when the same question will be answered by the social model, in the first place, it says it is not the disability to the child which is the problem. Rather, The problem lies with the inaccessible education and teaching learning environment.
When we shift our approach from medical to social model, we are able to locate the barriers properly, and can remove the same barrier, so as to provide an accessible and inclusive education environment for all. So what shall we do? Well, we can start to think abilities. The primary action that we need to take, in order to avoid labeling and bring about meaningful inclusion, would be, instead of identifying child with his disabilities, start associating child with his abilities. Thus, shift our thinking from medical to social model. So now, let's learn more about shifting from medical model to social model. This shifting of approach can be comprehended through 5 simple steps. 1. Identification of special needs. 2. Avoid labeling. 3. Removing barriers. 4. Identifying abilities. 5. Nurture capacities. While, in the first step, that is identification of disability, the medical model approach is required. However, the shift towards social model begins with step 2. Let's have a closer look in all these steps. Step 1 is identification of special needs, which involves understanding the nature of disability. Barrier that are faced by students in regular teaching learning. Identifying alternate resources required. Step 2 is avoid labeling, which involves stop calling names or giving negative remarks to students. Ensure peer groups are supportive and not bullying. Step 3 is removing barriers, which involves making learning accessible. Creating inclusive environment by following universal design of learning, UDL principles. Step 4 is identifying abilities, which involves identifying the interests and abilities of children through various curriculum and extracurricular activities. Step 5 is nurturing capacities, mentoring children for achieving greater goals. Collaborating with resource centers for facilitating academic and non-academic skills. The aim of inclusion and inclusive education is to provide an environment where children learn to live together. That is, children respect diversity and individual differences, and are sensitized to needs of peers, with or without special needs. This goal cannot be achieved through academics. Therefore, socialization needs of all the children is important. It calls for designing of inclusive environment through sports and other co-curricular activities. Socialization is soul of inclusive education. Inclusive education vouches for providing a social environment to all children, which is closest to the real environment. Multiple environmental factors are responsible for shaping personality of a child. Therefore, schools need to be a safe place for children to develop their potential and talents, which are often beyond academics. Instead of designing direct instructions for developing social skills, trainings, curriculum activities or extracurricular activities must be organized. Like for developing acquaintance and friendship. Through activities such as greeting, joining and leaving a group. Developing social maintenance capacity. Through planning of activities such as community-based learning, involving helping other and cooperating with peers. Developing adjustment and assimilation capacity. Through organizing play or sports for developing teamwork and conflict resolution tactics. Inclusive games and sports planning is a very effective way of promoting socialization through co-curricular activities. Designing, adaptation, and modification of games can be done to minimize or eliminate the barriers faced by child with special needs, and allows participation of all the children. Such modification in games must be reviewed time to time, as per the need of the existing group. Similarly, integrating arts, crafts, drama, music, painting, with co-curricular or extracurricular activities, not only gives a joyful learning experience but also allows children to their enhancing personality, identifying hidden potentials and fostering inherent capacities of all children. It is a great way of initiating interaction of children, sharing similar interests, and thus foster social skills and communication. Now, let's do a quick review on the topics covered so far: disability types from policy lens, meaningful inclusion and effects of labeling, shifting from medical to social model, beyond academic needs, socialization. With this we have reached to the end of Module 2. I thank you all for giving your time. Have a nice day ahead.